Let the games begin.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Quick thanks to the subscribers if you subscribed. Really appreciate it. This is a book review of just one book, and it's Bloody Rose. So this is by Nicholas Eames, and it came out in 2018, and it's the sequel to a book that I've already reviewed on this channel called Kings of the Wyld. So if you've seen that review, you know that I really liked the first book. So I was keen to read this one, and I've now finished it, and I really liked it. I did put up a quick short video when I first started it saying how much I was enjoying just the beginning. I was loving the beginning. It starts with a couple of chapters that are absolutely brimming with charisma, and the pace just, leaps at you very quickly, and immediately you're kind of introduced to these characters and the point of view character very quickly, and you immediately want to keep reading. And there's quite a lot of events in the book. The characters go through quite a lot of changes, but it keeps you gripped throughout because the writing's always interesting, and Nicholas Eames definitely knows how to tell a story. And but the important thing is, with the first book and this book, the characters are very interesting, likable, well drawn out, and the relationships between the different characters, possibly more in this one than the first one, are what gives the book its heart. It gives the book its power, and a lot of the kind of hit points in the story, the parts that really kind of move the story along, are actually about the characters. So there's some really great moments in the book where the plot slows down a little bit so that you can find out something that's been at the core of one of the characters, and all the characters are explored really well. So who are these characters? So this is a band of mercenaries. It's a really cool cover, isn't it? But these five characters on the front are literally the five main characters in the book. So it's several years after the first book, and the first book was about this character Rose being rescued from a siege in a city by another band of mercenaries, one of which featured her father. And now she's got her own band of mercenaries. She's got her own reputation. She was known as the daughter of Golden Gabe, who was one of the characters in that first book, in that first band of mercenaries. And she's been kind of she feels like she's almost cursed by his reputation and being a daughter of Golden Gabe, and has to live up to it. And it's quite well explored, the idea that she's got this band of mercenaries literally to try and justify the reputation she's got and to live up to his name. So that's one of the interesting aspects of the book. But I'll just go through who these people are, and I'll talk about this one at the end. So that's Rose, and Bloody Rose from the title, because that's the nickname that she's been given by the public. But her name's Rose, and she leads the band of mercenaries. She's quite an interesting character because she's quite flawed. She's driven, but she's driven by a single-mindedness that is sometimes at odds of what you might think was more logical. So I think that's kind of interesting. She's got a very intimate, close relationship with this character, Free Cloud, who's a druid. So one of the interesting things about druids is that they can see slightly into the future, so a few seconds into the future, and that becomes a part of the plot where one of the villains is a druid, and it's harder to defeat them in battle because they can see what's coming, so they can parry any kind of attack quite easily. So a direct attack doesn't really work on a druid. So that's kind of interesting, but he's quite an interesting character anyway because of his kind of wisdom and the way he interacts with the other characters. That big thing there is Brune. So Brune is a shaman and also a shapeshifter, and the shapeshifting bit of it comes in about a quarter of the way through, and that gets developed. And again, it's another kind of curse at the beginning, and something that he's got to deal with, and the whole band of mercenaries have to deal with as well. And that bit of the book is really good. And then, possibly the most interesting character out of the this particular band of mercenaries is this character here, Cura. So Cura is an ink witch or a summoner. So in various points in the book, she's either addressed as the summoner or the ink witch, and obviously Cura, her name. And the way that she takes part in battles is that these tattoos come to life and fight on her behalf, and it kind of drains her energy and there's a really intense bit where she's releasing a lot of tattoos at one point, and like her nose is bleeding, and she's in an absolute state because of how it affects her. So it does have a consequence when she's doing it, but it's a really interesting aspect to the set pieces that happen. So those four are the band of mercenaries, and they're called Fable. But here, on the side here, is the point of view character of the book. So she's called Tam, and she starts off, she's very young and she's very naive, and she sees these sort of people as this sort of heroic adventurer types, and she quickly realizes when she's with them that the reputation that mercenaries have got is utterly built on some kind of sort of show business aspect, where they're almost fraudulently creating a reputation that is sort of built on exaggeration and manipulation of the facts and things like that. So that's kind of an interesting beginning, and she changes a lot through the story, and she learns a lot, and her relationship with these guys has a big influence on her, and her encounters with the different people they meet through the story changes her as well, and she becomes quite a different person by the end of it, as do some of these other characters as well. So I think, one of the things about the character development is it does genuinely evolve through the book, and you do feel a lot of sympathy for them, which is, a sign of good writing. And in this very fantastical world with a lot of violence in it, a lot of bravado, and a lot of banter, there's a lot of heart to it as well. There's a lot of emotional baggage. There's a lot of sharing of intimate moments and sharing of honesty, and some sort of unspoken truths through the story. And it gives it much more depth than it might have been if it was just superficial action piece. It's a really good book. It's a lot of fun. It's as I said, it's got some very serious moments as well, and there's some really good action pieces. He's very good at writing action and these sort of battles that happen. There's a huge battle at the end, which is probably not a massive spoiler, because a lot of these books end up finishing off with a big battle. So it is quite a chaotic battle at the end of it, with a huge array of characters involved. But it's written really well. And one of the funny things about this, just like the first book, Kings of the Wyld, is there's a kind of a nod to music, and loads of references to rock and pop throughout this book and in the other book. So the other book, there was like a tagline across the top of Kings of the Wyld that was "The Boys Are Back in Town," which is obviously a classic Thin Lizzy song. And for this one, the tagline is "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," obviously the Cyndi Lauper song. And I mean, this is just, it doesn't get in the way of the story, But it's just funny that he uses an opportunity whenever he can to make a reference to a band or a song in the names that he gives the mercenaries. So you've got like you've got White Lion. That's a pub. There's a character in it who's a woman who's nicknamed the Iron Maiden. You've got a flying ship called the Barracuda, which is obviously a classic song from Heart. There's like a couple of different bands of mercenaries called the Boomtown Rats and the Vandals, and there's a reference to some mercenaries that are called the Duran Brothers, which is clearly a little play on Duran Duran. So that's a little bit of fun that it's not a massive focus in the story, but it's just another thing that he's put in there. But I think it's interesting because the first half of the book really gives you the sense of a band going on tour. They're a band of mercenaries. This is all about fighting fights rather than playing music. But there's lots of parallels to a band going on tour that is much clearer in this book, I think, than the other book. I mean, both books have got those kind of parallels, but I thought that was quite a fun part of certainly the first half of the book. When it gets into more of a deepened plot in the second half of the book, then it's not really so much about a band being on tour and just about resolving what had been set up with the plot and the fact that there's a kind of a big twist halfway through, and what they'd been leading towards ends up changing its definition, and they have to deal with something else. So yeah, it's quite funny as well. There's loads of times when I outwardly giggled at some of the dialogue, and some of it was sarcasm, some of it was, observation, some of it was more sentimental jokes that sort of made it more endearing, and some of it was just more just laugh out loud funny. But there was no sort of silliness in it though. It was all very earnest. So the humour in it I think was quite strong, and I think quite an accessible part of the book as well, because I think, as I say, the humour isn't completely mad and silly. It's sarcasm and banter and stuff. So yeah, I don't know if you fancy this book, but I really enjoyed it, and I don't feel like the 500 pages was too long. It took me a while to read it, only simply because I've been so tired lately. It wasn't no disrespect to the book. I really enjoyed it. So if you read Kings of the Wyld or Bloody Rose, let me know. Is this the sort of thing, does it sound like your kind of thing? Let me know in the comments. Bloody Rose, Nicholas Eames. Girls just want to have fun. Thanks for watching. Bye.